There's a lot of people that can do the work, whatever the work is, HVAC, power washing, plumbing, software development. A lot of people can do the work. There's not as many people that can go attract the clients and the employees and build the company.
How do you have a 25-year marriage when you're working to 3 a.m. and you're obsessed with business?
Protecting the time to have date nights, eventually to do some traveling, even if it's short trips, to have dinner with our boys and as a family every night. Finding those things that you have in common and doing those things are important.
What is your key messaging to that young high school, college entrepreneur?
When you're in control of your thing, there's this hope that, hey, I could learn another skill, tomorrow could be better. I could eventually find that right person, tomorrow will be better. The entire game of business is people. It's all people. There's a person that has a solution to every problem you have. There's a person that wants to do everything you don't want to do. The only game of business is going and finding those people and putting together.
What book should a young entrepreneur be learning from?
So I think one of the greatest books I ever read is a book called Oh, well, that sucks. Next.
Yo, we finally have the Lawn Care Millionaire, Jonathan Pototschnik. Might have to change that to Lawn Care Billionaire, the way things are going.
We'll see.
So for those of you who don't know the Lawn Care Millionaire, he is from City Turf. He started Service Autopilot. It was successfully acquired back in 2019.
August of 19.
August of 19. Naylor was telling me you're on a 2-year sabbatical and the entrepreneur in you is ready to get back into the game, man.
That's why I'm here. I'm getting bored.
So I heard you on the Boardroom podcast.
Oh, yeah.
That was excellent.
Oh, good. Thank you. Yeah.
So
yeah,
I
like those guys.
I want to
They're
go
sharp.
back to your story, Jonathan, when you had City Turf going on. Service Autopilot was in inception. You were doing a couple other things with medical software. Walk us back to that stage of your life when you had so much going on.
Okay. So this would be the 2000s. I was a partner in a cleaning company. We cleaned movie theaters. I was doing tech consulting because my first software business, who was the same business partner in Service Autopilot, our first business in our early 20s, we didn't make it. We were working on a really challenging problem and a little too challenging for us with the amount of money we had. And so I started doing computer consulting because I didn't want to get a job. And so like programming, that kind of thing. And so I was doing that. I ended up becoming a partner in the cleaning company because I was working with them on some technology stuff. And they're like, hey, do you want to be our partner? And then I ended up in the lawn care business, which became City Turf. And then another one of my consulting clients was starting a company in the healthcare space, and they wanted me to come in and build the technology and get all their initial clients. So I ultimately had 4 things going towards the end.
I just met your son, Riley.
Yeah.
And he looks like he's young 20s.
He's 21.
So at what point did you get married in all of this?
Oh, I got married at 21.
Oh, okay.
I'd been married a while. So.
And at what point was the entrepreneurship journey when you met your wife?
Well, I started mowing yards when I was 14. So she knew me as the kid in high school that made money and worked his butt off and didn't show up to school a lot because he was working.
Okay.
So, yeah. So I met her when I was 17.
And then how many years have you guys been married?
25.
But you're talking about doing the dishes and your wife expects you to clean them afterwards. That's how I am. You're talking about going and hanging out for 20 minutes. I was like that.
Yep. You really did hear the whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
I listened
That's
to
my
that,
life to this day.
But what I'm insinuating I want you to talk about is how do you have a 25-year marriage when you're working to 3 a.m. and you're obsessed with business?
Well, I think Tiffany and I had a number of interests that were the same. We were aligned on how we wanted to raise our kids, and we were aligned on we wanted a strong relationship and just a number of things. She was supportive of the business. There was an element of trust. Maybe it was naive on her part because we were so young, but there was this element of trust where she didn't question a lot of what I was doing. She sort of let me run that side of our lives, and I let her run the kid side of our lives, which both of those things mattered to us. And so I think the dividing up and conquering was valuable for us. But I give her a ton of credit because early in our marriage, I don't remember how the conversation went down, but we wanted to have dinners as a family. We wanted to go on date nights. I mean, this goes back to my 20s.
Oh, wow.
And we had said, these are the things we want to do. And my wife's a very processed person, structured person. I guess you heard that on the podcast. And whenever I would say, hey, I really need to work tonight. It's Friday night. Tiffany would be like, no, we were going to do date nights. Remember that? It's like, or whenever it's like, hey, I'm going to be, I felt guilty if I'd be home late for dinner. So she really kept me accountable. And so I look back, the reason I'm telling this story is I look back and I think, man, I could have really slipped up and just let more and more and more work creep into my life and messed up other parts of my life, my family and kids, which are incredibly important to me. A well-lived life is all of the stuff, not just the business and the money. And so she really helped hold me accountable, and I'm really thankful for that. And so I think protecting the time to go have date nights, eventually when we could afford it, to do some traveling, even if it was short trips, to have dinner with our boys and as a family every night if I wasn't out of town. Just those things were really, really important. And I'll give another one to her. She's a better talker than I am. I'm a really great talker in the business. Like, I can come talk to you all day long, but Tiffany's really good as like, okay, we need to have this conversation about this thing. Whereas I could just like, gloss over that stuff and go back to work. And so that was probably I'll give her credit there too. That's probably pretty good, where we had conversations if there could be challenges in our marriage. And I think that's valuable.
What was her input as you're building these businesses and making decisions along the way? Did she ever get a sense or a feeling and say, hey, you shouldn't do that, or you should do this? Or did she have any influence in your decisions as a business leader?
I'm sure she did. I don't think it's going to be quite what you're asking, but one of the things I noticed, this is where we just had this unique, she worked as an entrepreneur's wife. And what I mean, it's like a really challenging, any spouse that goes down the road with an entrepreneur, I mean, they've signed up for something quite challenging, and it doesn't always work out. And so it's tough,
Yeah.
and for them. And so for whatever reason, she just didn't seem to be too terribly uptight about, will it work out? And so, and I'm sure she was a little worried at times. But where I'm going with this is what I noticed is it wasn't so much that I'd have a conversation, say, hey, do you think I should do this? It was more sometimes when I didn't tell her about some kind of an idea, like I didn't want to really tell anybody about it. After the fact, when that idea didn't work out, I was like, oh, maybe that's why I didn't want to tell anybody about it, or didn't want to tell Tiffany about it. I didn't want anybody to beat down my idea. I didn't want anybody to challenge my idea.
Yeah.
And so it's not what you're asking, but I've noticed over the years, there's been a few things I haven't, not that I've shared everything I'm doing, because it's probably good that we didn't talk about business all the time. I actually think that was great. But I have had this experience where I've thought these things that were kind of big decisions that I didn't tell Tiffany about, there was a clue there that maybe I didn't want to defend them because I wasn't 100% certain they'd really work out. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, no, 100%.
Okay. And then the other thing that was kind of challenging for us at times, and she handled it great, but we were building these businesses and I never raised capital. I never even had line of credit for any of my businesses. And so you're just putting everything back in. You're living as inexpensive as you possibly can, trying to afford the next person in your company that's going to make your life a little bit better. Like, that's the never ending game for quite some time. And so we've always had friends that are older than us. A lot of our friends are historically have been maybe 10 years older than us.
Yeah.
So, and they have jobs and good jobs. So they're buying BMWs and bigger houses and the Yukon or whatever the car, the SUV back in the day. And I remember that being a little bit of a thing where it's like Tiffany really wanted, like, could I get the nicer SUV for the boys? That kind of a thing. And I remember some of those things they felt stressful to me, like, because I saw this vision of where we were going, and we needed to keep investing. And she was ready for a little bit more feeling of success and some stuff. And I was pushing that off. And so that was one of the challenging things. I mean, we navigated it fine, but I remember feeling pressure around it. And I remember her feeling frustration around it.
Very well said. I want to hear the story of Service Autopilot. If you look at the biography of Jonathan, and it's a previous chapter of just pure success. At what point did you see that pain point of, the administrative part of a business, and how did you actually start that company, then, get it successfully acquired?
Yeah, so I saw it initially. I was a partner in this cleaning company I alluded to, all commercial, big deals. And I was trying to find some software for that. And it was hard. And I had looked at a product called NetSuite that was really expensive at the time. And and they're way more expensive today.
Yeah,
and
Oracle?
Now it's owned by Oracle.
Yeah.
Oracle was one of the big, Larry Ellison was one of the big early investors. And then I think, if I remember, Oracle acquired it. So anyway, I had that experience through the cleaning company trying to find something. NetSuite's a stand. I was like, man, this is a lot of money. How does a smaller company afford this? And then the real breakthrough, though, was with CityTurf. So when I started CityTurf, I actually started CityTurf as commercial and switched it to residential. And I had made up this number. I want 1,000 clients. Well, then you start thinking about, how do I bill 1,000 clients? How do I handle the phone calls? How do you use or manage all the moving parts of 1,000 client business? Right. And today it's 11,000 client business. And And I wasn't there yet, but I could see where we were going. And so I was looking around in the marketplace and I couldn't find anything. And so I knew how to program. So I started building my own little application to run City Turf and then the cleaning business. And kind of muddled through, and we had estimating and some basic task management and such. And that's where I got the idea for Service Autopilot.
Wow.
John and I had been trying to get back to, John was my business partner in Service Autopilot.
Okay.
We'd been trying to get back together to work on software. That's what we both wanted to do. And he had stayed in that space, but working for people.
Yeah.
And so this was the pain I was feeling around how am I going to build bigger businesses with lots of moving parts and lots of clients is where the idea came from. Because I looked in the first company I looked at back then that I was really interested in was Real Green. But Real Green was really fertilization weed control.
Of course.
They did some cool stuff on marketing. That's one of the things I liked about them. It's like, oh, these guys are a little bit, they think about direct mail and marketing. No other software in the green space was doing that. But they just felt like the older desktop technology, and there's a number of things I didn't like. And that's, if I had gone with Real Green, I may never have started a software company, but they just didn't quite tick the boxes. And I thought they were the best at the time. And so that's where the idea came from. And John, I was able to get John excited about it. We're like, yeah, let's do this thing.
And what year did you guys launch Service Autopilot then?
I think of January of 10 as being the official date. I remember we put up a server in November of 09. We didn't have any clients, but we put up a server. In fact, actually, we did get a client. We just put up a website, but we didn't have anything to sell yet. And a pest control company in Houston signed up for it one night. And I remember I contacted John. We both get on the phone. It's like, hey, did you set up a test account last night in the software? And we're like, it was neither one of us, and it was some company that signed up. We weren't ready for them, but that was November of 09.
Wow,
they signed
your first customer.
Yeah. And so they actually, we didn't have anything for them immediately, if I remember correctly, and they stayed with us for years, eventually moved on. I don't know what happened to them. And so January of 10 is when I really remember we were serious about this thing, and it became our full-time, all-in effort.
And simultaneously to that, you're still the owner of City Turf.
Yeah.
So you just had management running all that to where you could give your time to this new endeavor.
In 10, I was still, so the whole time of City Turf up until that point, I was the leader of that business. I was the sales estimating guy. It was a lot, a lot going on.
Wow.
And because also during that time I was doing other software stuff. And so it was a lot. I had this really awesome guy. I didn't know how awesome he was just yet, but I knew this guy has some serious potential. I really liked him. And he is the president of the company today.
Okay.
And so I started, as I remember it, this has been a while, so you never know what's like revisionist history, but as I remember it, in 2010, I was really being forced to just let him run stuff and make the decisions. And by 2012, I was almost completely uninvolved in the business. But in 2010 and 11, because I was so busy, I was fairly uninvolved. But I started Service Autopilot in an office next door to City Turf. So I could still kind of go over there and talk to him. He could come over and talk to me. And so I was close to the business, but I wasn't running it for those 2 years.
And then at what point did you start the Lawn Care Millionaire? And was that just a marketing effort to funnel customers into Service Autopilot? Because a lot of folks, you guys know who he is from standing in front of a whiteboard talking about getting your credit card on file and all the gems you were putting out. How did that come into the equation? Yeah,
so Lawn Care Millionaire started it before Service Autopilot, trying to figure out how to sell Service Autopilot.
Okay.
So Lawn Care Millionaire was one of the great lessons of my business career. I've had this conversation maybe with Naylor yesterday or somebody even today at breakfast. Lawn Care Millionaire is a tiny little channel. I mean, I don't know. I haven't looked at it in years, but call it, I'll bet there's maybe 5 million views. I don't know. I'd have to go look. Tiny little nothing of a channel. I was telling Naylor, if that thing didn't make me, and I am not exaggerating, $10 million, I would be blown away. And it was that critical. And so the way that came to be was I put out this site called Lawn Care Millionaire, and the subtitle was Ideas to Make You a Lawn Care Millionaire. Everybody calls me the Lawn Care Millionaire. The idea was I want to make you a Lawn Care Millionaire.
I called you the Lawn Care Billionaire.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. So, but my thing was I want to make you the Lawn Care Millionaire.
Right.
What do you need to know? I'll answer it. And what I was trying to accomplish was I wanted to understand what your pain points were, what your challenges were, so that I could figure out how to word my sales videos and sales letters and marketing to sell Service Autopilot. And what ended up happening was, this is 2010. This happened all the time. I was the sales guy. I was the everything except the coder back then. And somebody would call me up, call Service Autopilot up, and they'd been watching Lawn Care Millionaire videos. We talked for 55 minutes about your business, and for 5 minutes we talk about software, and then you buy the software.
Wow.
And it's like, wow, like this is building trust and authority. And people are just saying, hey, if you know what you're talking about and you help me with your business, you probably understand what I need in software. And they just buy. They didn't ask any of the right questions, didn't go through the right process. And it was like a wow, light bulb moment. And then the other thing was it just started bringing in so many clients. And so if I could go do it all over again, I would go so much bigger with that. But the problem was back then, it was like we didn't have a line of credit, and developers are very expensive, and we didn't hire developers outside the United States. They all worked in our office. And so every dollar we made and every minute we had went into that business. And so I was off doing all kinds of other things and didn't spend enough time on that. It was so valuable, I would do it different now.
Yeah, totally. So as that's growing, Service Autopilot is exploding. I know Payjack, Naylor, so many people are using Service Autopilot. At what point did that light bulb go off that somebody could purchase this for a boatload of money?
When I was 2 years old, I got offered $20 million for it.
Wow.
And
but when you started
legitimate.
it, you weren't thinking, I'm going to build this and sell this. You just started it because...
I just want to build a business and make money. Even when we sold Service Autopilot, I did not want to sell. I was not ready to sell the business. We weren't talking about selling it. It was just a couple of things you might have heard. Real Green transacted.
Yep.
And I was like, for desktop software, they got that number. That was that, because they had started in 19. They had started building a online version, but it wasn't really what anybody was using. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, I'm not putting them down. Joe and those guys. I mean, Joe did a masterful job over there at that business. So I don't mean any negative, but it's like, wow, for desktop software, because we are in a SaaS world now. They got that number, and that's what made me go look at the market. So, answering your question. From the early days, I knew it was a possibility like any business you build, but it was never my goal. I just wanted to build a really good business that would take really good care of me financially. And we were approached very early on when we were a little business. We were doing $1.7 million, I remember when we got, so 2 years in or something like that. And we got that offer, and it was a very formal contract.
20 million, 2 years in.
Yeah, and maybe it was 2.5. And
your wife wants the upgraded lifestyle.
Yeah.
Did you even tell her?
I did. And interesting, she's like, if you think we should keep going, good. John and Lori my business partner, John, and his wife, Lori, had a little bit more of a conversation about it than Tiffany and I had. But for all of us, like, hey, no, this is what we want to do. We see the potential here. Thank goodness. And when we sold SA, or part of it, I'm still on the cap table in the Explore business, but cap table simply means I'm still one of the owners in the business. When we sold that business, Verizon, that was the rough Verizon, as you know, Verizon, they were in the process. Yeah. That's, without getting into all the details, that's kind of who was back years earlier, under a different name, but it was Verizon. I'm leaving out some gaps, but those guys on that call, when they were looking at us in the deal, they specifically said, it's a good thing you guys didn't sell to us. And so, anyway, that gave us probably some amount of confidence. We definitely thought about it. It gave us confidence that we were working on the right thing, but it really wasn't as tempting as you might think. Like, we really wanted to do SA. And even in 19, John and I really wanted to do SA. I remember when we were thinking about selling the business, we used to put on this annual event.
SA4, SA5. Yeah.
And that event is a beatdown. And we never made money on it. We weren't trying to make money. We were just trying to get our clients in town to hang out.
And you had Mike McAllowitz.
A bunch of people.
I remember those. Yeah.
And so one of the things John specifically mentioned was, we're not going to be able to do the conference anymore. Like, it was, so that was sort of how it was hard even when we sold. It's like, these are our people. These are our friends now. We felt like we were making a difference. I was doing the academy thing, which was a coaching thing as well. I felt like I was having an impact. And so it never was actually an easy decision to sell the business, even when we did it.
Yeah. In the Hebrew language, the word retirement doesn't even exist.
I don't like the word retirement.
Right, but it doesn't. I don't know your religion or anything.
No, I'm familiar with what,
Yeah, but I'm not Jewish, but I read Daniel, Rabbi Lapin, he talks about that there's certain words in the Hebrew language that don't even exist because they weren't created. So anyway, Naylor told me Jonathan Pototschnik.
Yeah, Pototschnik.
So 2 years off of Sabbatical, I'm like, you're probably on the beach like doing cartwheels, or like I can't imagine you sitting somewhere relaxing. That just doesn't make sense. So how has that been 2 years to kind of analyze all of this and recalibrate?
Yeah. So it's not quite. So it's I gave up CEO role in SA in April of 21. So I'll get back from, we travel a lot, and so when I'll get back from New Zealand on March 3rd of next year, and when I get back, that will be 3 years roughly since I gave up CEO role, and 2 years since I stopped doing academy. So what happened is I gave up CEO role, and I was just around for questions in SA if anybody higher up needed me or my team needed me. Mm-hmm. And then I did this academy thing, which was not overly difficult. I'd just teach once a month and go on a trip here and there with the academy guys, which I loved all those guys. So it was gals. So it was, it didn't feel like that hard of work. Mm-hmm. So it's almost been, frankly, 3 years come this March.
So you went 100% hard for a decade.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then for 3 years with completely different gear.
Yes. Yeah. And so to answer what I think you were asking is, my transition also happened during COVID. And so I was at home a lot, and I'm a people person.
Okay.
And I love my team at Service Autopilot, and I'm just not really around them. I'm on Zoom. I don't enjoy that much. And so between that and now, and I wasn't really even on the Zoom much because I was CEO role. So I was on, and then I gave up CEO role. And so every once in a while I was on Zoom. So it was sort of me and Tiffany at home. I guess my boys were still home at the time, but it was like, there wasn't that work stuff I normally had. Between that and then not really having a purpose where you're not moving the ball forward, you don't feel like you're progressing, you don't feel like you're solving a problem. It was a weird feeling where I was just off. Mm-hmm. I wasn't unhappy, but I wasn't, like you would say, oh man, if you're on break, it's got to be insane. I didn't feel that way. I felt things were just off.
Okay.
And it took me a while to sort of get past that phase. I think I had to decompress. Okay. I'll give you an example. Tiffany makes fun of me for this. The property I own my house is 4 acres, mainly in the trees. And so I sell the business, and I'll just go out there with a Home Depot bucket and pick up rocks, or like pick up tree branches or things like that. I just dumb stuff or trim the trees. Like I don't need to do any of these things, but I would just go do those things. And I think I just needed to decompress.
Yeah.
The selling process was intense. And so it took me a while to unwind. Then I sort of unwound, and we've been doing a lot of traveling. I ride motorcycles, race cars, I do all these other things. And so I had plenty of things I was doing. And I got to a point where it's like, oh, I could do this. I could keep doing this for a while. In fact, at times I thought maybe I could do this the rest of my life. I can find enough hobbies and things to do that maybe I don't work again. Never really believed that, but I could do it. And I think that was telling. I got to a place where I had decompressed. I had accepted my new world. And then I got through that trough of acceptance and happiness to I'm ready to be back in the game.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm here. I just showed up
I
for
wouldn't
this
be
thing.
surprised if, I don't know if it's going to be your next chapter, to the chapter after that, if you even trump Service Autopilot success. Like it may, when your journey as an entrepreneur is over, Jonathan, that wasn't the greatest feat. There might be something down the road where everything you learned from that, as successful as it was, you have a new thing that you're just,
it might be. I don't know. Most likely it won't be about the money, though. It's like if you measure it in money, I don't know if I'll do something bigger. Simply because I might, though. I don't know where life's going. I'm not trying to. It's really so. You have a big win. I've had a few wins, but really big win with Service Autopilot. You have a lot of friends that are very successful, maybe way more successful than you, that have sold companies for $500 million, just big numbers. Mm-hmm. And there's this competitive element. And I'm trying to be very careful of that, where it's like, okay, are you getting back in the game just to keep a scorecard that, as I say, doesn't even matter? Right. And so I fight that a little bit. So I think there's a chance I do something financially bigger, but I think it's more likely I do something that's more meaningful. Right. As an example, where I know I'm going, but I don't know how fast I'm going down this road. I want to work with high school and college kids to become entrepreneurs. I don't want to convince them to become entrepreneurs. I want the younger people that raise their hand and say, this is the life I want to travel. I want to help them. I want to help those that sort of pop their head up, much like Riley, my son, because I think those are the people that change the world. And so that may not be like you're selling to the absolute worst audience. They have no money. So that's not a good business, but it's something I really care about. So it could be that I don't do something financially bigger. It's that I do something that I feel is more impactful and more meaningful. And I would get a lot out of that.
What is your key messaging to that young high school, college entrepreneur with a clean slate? What do you tell them?
Here's
the core
to do
principles.
Oh, principles? Well, first I would tell them if you are attracted to this life, you have to do it. You have to go for it. And you have to do the time. There's a general idea in the world that you should get your outcomes very fast. Take it cryptocurrency or whatever. You heard all the stories of the guy that bought it 100 and it ran up to 60,000 or whatever. You hear all these fast stories, or you hear about the last few years of some young tech entrepreneur and they became a billionaire. And so there's this misunderstanding that your success should happen quickly, and it doesn't actually. It almost never happens that way. And so one of my core messages is, and it's not a great sales message if you're trying to attract people to entrepreneurship, but this is going to be freaking hard. Mm-hmm. And you're going to be tired and exhausted, and you're going to want to give up, and you're going to wonder if it's worth it. And can I afford that employee? Should I hire more employees, or should I keep it small? You're going to have all these questions. It's worth every minute of it. It's the thing. If you are even slightly interested, you have to do it. You have to go for it, and you have to be willing to sacrifice the time to become the kind of person that deserves to own a bigger business and have success and have wealth. And it's very tempting to, on a day when you're tired, compromise and say, well, maybe I don't really want that. Maybe I don't really want that business. Maybe I don't really want to own my own business. Maybe I don't really want to be a millionaire someday. Maybe I don't want to live on that. I'm making some of it about financial stuff. There's lots of other reasons to do this. Maybe I don't really care about having a bigger house or that car I dreamed of since I was 10. And that's a compromise. That is you compromising because it's hard. And so you tell yourself a new story to let yourself off the hook. That is the worst thing you can do. You have to, if this is what you want, you have to get this thing no matter what. And so another conversation I have is, it's a younger individual, and they'll say, well, maybe I should go get a job for 6 years or 8 years and save some money and learn some things and come back. Oh, that'd be great, but let's look at the data. You're probably never coming back, because as soon as you get married and you have a kid, or you don't get married or have a kid, but you go buy a bigger house and a cool car, you're like, that's the new standard of life, and you're not willing to give up the money. And so you never build the thing. And so you never live the life. This is the best life you can live. I don't care if you keep your business small. But it's a good business. You're in control. Like, I believe that happiness is hope, and hope is that tomorrow could be better than today.
Wow.
And you get hope from being in charge. If you go to a job that you can go to a great job with great people, I'd like to think at Service Autopilot, I provided that. And people can do well inside a job, but a lot of jobs kind of suck. And they really do. And whether it be the owner, or now it's a public company or a big corporation, or it's a financial buyer that owns it. It all feels like it's just about making money. It doesn't feel like there's any other purpose. And that is the purpose of a business. But my point is, you get trapped inside those organizations. They don't generally bring people a lot of satisfaction and happiness. And so you don't have the hope. But when you're in control of your thing, there's this hope that, hey, I could learn another skill. Tomorrow could be better. I could eventually find that right person. Tomorrow will be better. And that is what I believe leads to happiness. Also, I'm giving you a very long answer, but what also I believe happens is when you're in control, you have to learn all these skills, and those skills give you confidence, and confidence also leads to happiness. Confidence leads to hope. Like, I could fix a thing or be in control of it.
To that young entrepreneur, Jonathan, what are some books you recommend, some materials to get, influenced by, basically what I'm asking, like, what books should a young entrepreneur be listening to, the audiobooks or the paperback books, learning from?
That's a tough one. There's a lot of books. I'm trying to think of a book that is at that right place and time. I mean, so I think one of the greatest books I ever read is a book called Influence.
Okay.
It's a psychology book by Robert Cialdini, and I would put that in my top list. That is maybe not a recommendation you'd expect, but one of the great skills you can learn and need to learn in business is how to attract clients to you in business. And so learning your marketing skills is generally a place. So I said in that podcast you were alluding to before that there's a lot of people that can do the work, whatever the work is, HVAC, power washing, plumbing, software development. A lot of people can do the work. There's not as many people that can go attract the clients and the employees and build the company. And so learning psychology, that's the Influence book, learning marketing, really good at learning how to sell. Those are the skills that give you the confidence that you can go build a thing.
Yeah.
And so the doing the work is not as, it's great, but it's not as impressive. Like performing the activity is, it's not, it doesn't get you quite as far as being able to go build the thing. And so I think about that, and a lot of people just, two guys that I think are doing a great job out there. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are already watching, but Alex Hormozy is doing a phenomenal job. Russell Brunson, ClickFunnels, those guys actually live it. Like, and they both came from the same world I did. They came from the same marketing world I came from. Like when I listen to both those guys, it's like they're having the exact same conversation that I have in my head every day. We live in the exact same worlds. And so the reason I bring them up is I know there are so many people out there teaching that have never done it. Those guys have actually done it. They're worth listening to. So
Dan Kennedy, Russell purchased all Dan Kennedy stuff. I don't know if you ever listened to him.
Dan Kennedy is my single biggest influence that led me to everybody I know.
Okay.
I mean, in some way, and that's where Russell came from. And back, I was in the same world when he was there. Russell would speak on Dan's stage at times. So what I like about him, and this is a great lesson to a young entrepreneur, my perception of what he's done is Dan would teach something and Russell would say, oh, I trust Dan. I'm going to take it. I'm going to do it. And he would implement it. A lot of people say, oh, thanks for that idea. They don't implement it, or they're like, well, what if I do it this way? And they change it all up and then they don't get the result. Russell is, and again, maybe wrong perception here. I've never met him, only his business partner, Todd. But I am under the impression that he would just say, whatever Dan's saying is gospel, and he'd go do it. Mm-hmm. And he lived it. And he just like soaked up all that. If you look at the way he writes today, the way so many things he does, they're straight out Dan Kennedy 20 years ago. It's still the same stuff.
Yeah.
And Alex is clearly influenced by Dan and the group that came from Dan and Gary Halbert and those guys back in the day. And so we went off on a tangent, but I'd point people to those guys that are online because most people, in my opinion, haven't actually done it. And so you got to be a little careful following it. Those two have done it. And so they're worth listening to because they're legit.
How you mentioned earlier, Jonathan, hanging around these guys selling businesses for $500 million. And as successful as you've been, you're surrounded by guys who are even more successful. Mm-hmm. How did you pull that off of getting in those relationships with people who are much further ahead than you?
Events. You go to events and you show up in groups. I've been in multiple business groups. I had a coaching group. I didn't do that to make money. I did that because, I knew it'd make some money, but I did it because I wanted to do it. And I believe that's the unlock. Mm-hmm. I just believe it. I'm very sincere when I say most of what we did at SA was truly Service Autopilot was truly motivated by trying to help our member get the best possible outcome. We wanted to, and so that's where Academy came from. It's like, hey, this is another way to help them get to where they want to go. And I believed in that because I had been doing the same thing. I'd been in other groups. So I've been in all kinds of different groups and I've paid, I'm in a group right now that I paid $33,000 a year. I was in a group for a while, I paid $60,000 a year. I've been in multiples of these groups. I just may not talk about them on Lawn Care Millionaire or publicly, but I've been in them. And so in those rooms, you meet people that are doing things and then you get to know a person, you meet another person through them. And so that's how it's happened over time. And then what you're doing and what I did with Lawn Care Millionaire on a tiny scale compared to what you're doing, you build authority and reputation and people want to meet you. It's one of the greatest things you can ever do in life, in my opinion. And so by becoming somewhat visible, as small as that was, people would then want to talk to me like, hey, how'd you build your thing? Or they'd hear I have a bigger business. So maybe they're ahead of me, but they still want to talk about what I'm doing because they might be able to apply it to their business. So, just meet people in a million different ways, but that's generally how it happens.
That's so good. Jonathan, I wanted to pick your brain about your family life. So 25 years of marriage. I met your son. I've heard the snowboarding stories and got to see it. Looks like you guys have a healthy relationship just from the nonverbal communications.
Awesome. Yeah.
So there's so many entrepreneur success stories, right? That they end up getting divorced or they end up having some kind of conflict in their family. You have I'm just on the outside looking in. So maybe you guys are throwing fire pans at each other.
No, we're not.
How have you created that healthy family unit amidst all of this roller coaster of entrepreneurship?
And it's easy to put up appearances and make it look like everything's perfect. And our relationship is good and has been good, but it doesn't mean it's been easy or effortless or is even perfect at the moment. It's like there's always stuff that, just you need to talk about or you need to work through. And it generally goes back to communication, just like it does with partnerships in business. And so I just don't want to put out there perfection, but I will say that, we're both happy and it's been a great relationship. But we would both also say we need to make it better. And I think that's the reality. And I think you go through your periods of time. And so I'll go back to that word communication. And I said it earlier, my wife is the one that's better at that. I'm a great communicator in business. I can fix problems, but for whatever reason, I'm a little not so great at it in the relationship. I can't explain why, and she'll say that exact thing to me. It's like, you can talk to anybody and work anything out, but why can't we do that here?
Wow.
That kind of thing. Why do you shut down when I'm trying to have a conversation with you? Why do you get defensive? It's like, and she's not wrong. And so she's been really good about kind of pushing on those things. I think it's communication, it's time. Both of you have it. She was a teacher, but when Riley was born, she stayed home and stays home to this day. But I think it's important that you both have separate things. Like you have friend groups that are similar, but you also have your separate friends. You have the different interests that you're both involved in where you can kind of come back together. I think it's important not to be talking about the business and work all the time. I would imagine it's very complicated for many marriages if you're both in the business, and every time you go out on date night, every time you're not with the kids, you're just talking about, the AR, you getting your receivables paid or whatever the challenge is, or the complaining clients. Like, I don't think that's healthy. You need that disconnect where you have something else. So to elaborate just a bit further, finding things like Tiffany and I really like traveling together. We like hiking. We like a lot of this music, a lot of the similar things. There's other things. We're on the same page about how to raise our kids and the kind of life we want to live. Yeah. Finding those things that you have in common and doing those things are important. And then having your separate things, I think, are important. I don't have all the answers. This is a tough one, and I think to a large degree, we're just very fortunate that it worked out. When Riley turned 21, he's 21 now. When we turned 21, Tiffany and I are both like, I cannot believe we got married when we were 21. Like, why didn't either of our parents say, are you sure this is a good idea? Yeah. It's like, it's crazy. And so for most, it wouldn't have worked out. We're just very fortunate. So it's, we've done some of the right things, and some of it we're really fortunate it worked out.
Yeah. And then what about with your son? You have 2 sons?
I do.
How is that relationship? Because it looked like, just the way he was talking to you, like he likes you and you guys have a healthy relationship.
Yeah. We have an awesome relationship.
How have you cultivated that, Jonathan?
I don't know if I have the answer to this stuff. I would like to think, Riley would be, and he may not even be able to answer it. I really believe that my kids are their own individual people, and I need to treat them as their own individual people and not try to apply a set of rules to both of them. They're both traveling different paths. I don't need them to travel my path. I want them to be their people, find their thing in life. And so I've been, I wouldn't say I've been controlling. I've also been very, sometimes I am a little nervous for them and have to keep my mouth shut. It could be something that they're I don't know, going out. I'll just use an example. They're going out in the woods to play with BB guns or something. It's like, there's an element where, this is probably a terrible example, but there's this element where it's like, they're not going to get killed. It's going to be okay. But boy, I really don't want them to do this, but I need to just let them go explore and try things. And I don't want them to live in fear. And I don't want to put fear on them by constantly like, oh, is that going to go okay? Or trying to protect them from it. That's what I'm looking for. I made a very significant effort not to protect them. And so I think that I wasn't a controlling parent, but I was and Tiffany too, we were there. And so we gave them a lot of freedom. And so they're not trying to run away from us or get away from us because they feel like they're going to be judged by us or told how they should do things or controlled or anything. Like, they're their own people. I think, I'm speculating, but I think that was very helpful. And then we just, I've had a lot of conversations over the years. I'm trying to help them get to where they want to go in life, whether it's business or something else. And so we've found common ground. Snowboarding is something that I've done since they were little. And, I try, Riley races cars. I race, I'm into that stuff too. So trying to find the things with the boys that are common ground that we can do together has been really valuable. I again, just don't have the answer. Those are some of the things that come to mind.
What was your biggest takeaway from the sabbatical with 2 to 3 years to, reset and contemplate everything?
I'm really glad I did it. John and I had a conversation that if we decided not to sell a SA or service autopilot when we were starting to go through that process, that we were going to try to figure out how to take sabbaticals. We had that idea. Whether or not we would have lived it, I don't know. But we had the conversation, so it was sort of in my mind, but they would have been shorter ones. And so now in retrospect, having done it, I am so thankful for it. Because my wife or some other friends have said, oh, Jonathan's retired. I hate that word.
Yeah.
I always correctly say, no, I'm just on sabbatical. I'm taking a break.
Yeah.
Because a life well lived to me is staying in the game.
Yeah.
And staying around the people like you and like they give you energy and are moving the world forward and things like that. One is I'm very happy I did it. So thankful. And two, even though, so when we did our SA deal, we didn't have an earn out and we didn't have to stay. We could have gone immediately. Mm-hmm. And the reason I bring that up is I think it speaks to, we actually built a company with a team.
Yeah.
Which is what I teach. And we did that. And so they identified that and we weren't tied down on these, to have to stay. We stayed because we wanted to for as long as we did. And what I learned, so that build up was to make this point. I still had one-on-one meetings. I still had group meetings with some of my departments. I still did all these things. And after we did the deal, I knew that my days would be numbered there, that I would eventually move on. I realized how many things I was still doing that I didn't need to be doing in that business. And that was a big oh, wow, I did a lot more, even though I teach it. Mm-hmm. I try to teach people how to get free of their business. I don't think it's that imperative that you don't go to your business like I do at City Turf. I don't think that's not really what I'm pushing for. I'm just pushing for more freedom in the business where other people are running it and you're still involved.
Yeah.
I just discovered that I still was hanging on to lots of stuff. It's one thing to teach. It's another thing to truly, fully live it. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't truly, fully living. I was doing good, but I wasn't doing as good as I can. Did that make sense?
Yeah,
that was a big
100%.
wow.
I appreciate so much you sharing your story. What's been the biggest mistake you've made in all of this? What did you learn from it?
In all of what?
Your journey as an entrepreneur, going back to 2010 or even pre then. What's the biggest mistake you made? Like you said earlier, if you would have sold for 20 million 2 years in, that would have been a catastrophic mistake.
Yeah,
when you look back at all of it, what's the one thing you're like, I misstepped there. I wish I would have done this.
Yeah. I've got a few. It's a hard question for me to answer because I think one of the skills I've cultivated myself is it's sort of oh, well, that sucks. Next.
So
you just
pivot quick.
You just go and you get that out of your mind because if you're going to ruminate on it and think about it, it just drags you down, slows you down. So I think I've become pretty good at that. And I think it's my example of with young entrepreneurs. It's a skill you cultivate that makes the rest of your life better. Mm-hmm. And I was, as a younger person, I was more of a little bit more of a worrier. I needed to really have the plan. I'm not a plan person, but I kind of wanted to know where it was going. I didn't want to take a lot of risks. And so you cultivate these skills. So I don't have lots of things I regret because they sort of got me where I'm at. But I think about things like jumping around. And a lot of times jumping around from one activity to the next or the next idea is because you don't know what to do. That may be because you're not learning the right things around the right people. But I felt like I look back and say, and maybe it was exploration I couldn't get away from, but I feel like I jumped around too much. We definitely did in Service Autopilot. If John and I could do Service Autopilot again, we wanted to solve all of our clients' problems. And so we would build lots of functionality, frankly, we should have never built. But we were doing it from the best intention, but it was a wrong business decision. And that's an example. And so if anybody ever used SA and said, why the heck did you build this feature in the software? Well, think about that in your business. You were like working on one marketing campaign, then you had a new marketing campaign that you were working on, never finished the last one. And then a client called and complained about something. You're off dealing with that thing. You never finished the other thing. And there's all this switching cost. That's a big one that I wish I could have controlled that more early in my life. I got pretty good about it in Service Autopilot, but that took me a while to learn. The other one, it's the biggest things I teach. The entire game of business is people. It's all people. There's a person that has a solution to every problem you have. There's a person that wants to do everything you don't want to do. They're a little hard to find and they might be expensive at times. The only game of business is going and finding those people and putting together. And a lot of guys and gals watch sports. It's a sports analogy. There's no owner of a sports team or a coach of a sports team that's going to ever get on the field and be the quarterback or the running back. That's the dumbest freaking idea in the world. They'd never do it. What they do is they assemble a great team, the right people in the right positions, and they have no mercy about eliminating the wrong person from the company when they're not going to move the company forward. That is how business actually should work as well. You can have mercy and be kind about it when the person needs to move out of the organization. I don't mean it in a cruel way, but if you think about the sports analogy, that's actually how you're supposed to run a business.
Wow.
But we don't learn, we just never, you can hear it, but it doesn't get inside of you until you experience it. Once you experience it and say, hey, the unlock is just finding the right consultant, advisor, employee, contractor, whatever, they have the solution to my problem. And when I get to a place where all I do is find those people to solve, to get the vision that I want in life, what I want to create, that's how you go fast, and that's how you get where you want to go. Again, easy to say, really hard to comprehend, but once you see the light, you can never unsee it. That's the game of business. Took me a long time to learn that.
So good. I want to share two things with you as a viewer of the Lawn Care Millionaire. We're talking a long time ago.
Yeah, a long time ago.
You shared two things that really helped change my life. I wanted to let you know, and thank you.
Yeah.
The first one was credit card on file.
Okay.
You were preaching that before anybody else.
Yeah.
And it just made sense, and I did it. And I actually did, I'm in the Atlanta market, so I did prepay. So on the first of every month, January 1st, February 1st, I just calculated how many services a year, divided it by the month. I got paid on the first of every month ahead of time. All because of you saying that on YouTube.
Good for you. Awesome.
Credit card on file.
Cool.
Second thing is, and you might not even remember you saying this, but you talked about how you hired a personal trainer and you paid him for the year.
Oh, yeah.
Because you said, if I pay him for a year, then I'm going to feel like I got to go.
Got to do it.
And I might not look as great as you, but if you would have seen what I looked like before I heard that. So I started hiring personal trainers, and it's helped transform my health. And I learned that from you.
Really? Okay.
Yes. I don't even know if you remember
saying that. No.
You did.
Yeah.
You said, I've hired a personal trainer and I prepaid him for the whole year just so I go.
I believe in that. Yeah. I mean, obviously I said it. I don't say anything I don't believe, but I've done so much talking over the years. I don't remember all these things, but that's awesome. Well, good.
So
good for you for doing that.
Yeah. Thanks to Naylor, Taliaferro, John Pajak for getting you on the show and connecting this. You live in the Dallas area?
I do.
I'm coming to Vid Summit with Mr. Beast. You know, the YouTuber?
I don't know him personally, but yeah.
Well, they're doing a big conference in Irving.
What month?
It's October 3rd through 5th.
Oh, I'll be in Greece.
Oh,
so, yeah,
man.
That's
it's literally Mr. Beast and then the biggest YouTubers.
Yes.
Super expensive, but you get in a room with those guys and they teach you how to YouTube.
Okay, that'd be awesome.
It's at the Irving Convention Center.
Okay.
October 3rd through 5th, the Vid Summit.
I would have gone with that to you, and if you are gone with you to that, but if you come back to Dallas, let's get together and have dinner.
Absolutely.
I told Naylor last night, when I get done with my sabbatical, I'm doing YouTube and a podcast. I'm coming back. It's one of the most important things I ever did with my tiny little Lawn Care Millionaire channel. It's amazing how it impacted my life and impacted other lives. So I want to do it again, but on a much bigger scale. And so I'd be interested in that. And then, but like I said, I'm sincere. Come to Dallas. Let's get together.
Thanks so much, Jonathan.
Yeah.
How can people connect with you? After March 3rd, it will be more visible.
I'll be out there and I'll have something to say. Hey, you can go follow me here. Okay, the best thing to do would be to look me up on Facebook. I've never posted on Facebook, but I've collected a lot of friends, or some number of them. I'm not really good about proving. So if you look me up on my last name, Pototschnik, hopefully you can. Whenever I start a YouTube channel, I wanted to start under my own name, and I've decided that'd probably be a giant mess. Nobody's ever going to be able to spell Pototschnik, much less remember it. But if you could remember that, if you find me on Facebook and just friend me, whenever I start doing stuff again, I'll announce it through Facebook. Yeah, that's maybe the best
Gary
way.
Vaynerchuk just did Gary V.
Yeah.
The V, that's easy to remember. Pototschnik,
yeah. It's tough.
Yeah, I don't know how for branding perspective.
No, I've given this a lot of thought. I'm not going that direction. I wanted to, though. And then a lot of my good friends call me JP. JP's so universal. It's like I didn't. It'd have to be like JP and something else to make it work. So,
but you're big into personal brand for guys who own a lawn care landscaping company to utilize all of this.
Yeah, 100%.
Thanks so much for your time, Jonathan.
Man. Awesome seeing you. Yeah.